start broadcast. Okay. Good evening and welcome to this evening's simultaneous special meeting of Waverley and Guildford Standards Committees. I'm Councillor Andy MacLeod and I chair the Standards Committee here at Waverley, and seated to my right is Councillor Joanne Shaw, who is the chair of Guildford Standards Committee. Before I begin, I have a few housekeeping comments to make. May I ask everyone to switch their mobile phones and handheld devices to silence for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm sounds at any time during the meeting, we are not expecting it to go off. Everyone in the council chamber should leave immediately through the nearest fire exits and proceed calmly to the assembly point in the fields adjacent to the main car park. Before both committees consider the business of their respective agendas this meeting, I would like to remind everyone that by participating in these meetings, you are consenting to being filmed and recorded, and the possible use of these images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The recording will be available for repeated viewing afterwards on Waverley's YouTube channel. Although the meetings are being recorded, anyone is permitted to record the proceedings using their own devices, for example, for social media purposes, provided they do not disrupt the meeting in doing so. If you're attending remotely, may I ask that you have your cameras and microphones turned off at all times during the meeting and only switch them on when you're invited to speak. For your own privacy, camera background should be set to blurred. Any non-committee members of officers who are attending remotely and who wish to speak on any item should indicate this by leaving a request in the meeting chat box. You'll all have seen the protocol for conducting simultaneous meetings, which was circulated with the Outlook invitation to these meetings, and both the chairs have agreed that we will follow this protocol this evening. Under paragraph 3.1 of the protocol, I will now ask members and co-opted members of Waverley Standards Committee to introduce themselves, starting with my Vice Chairman.
Good evening, Councillor John Rabini from Hazelmere. I'm a county borough and town councillor.
Just go round.
Good evening, Councillor Gemma Long from Elsted and Pepperharrow.
Councillor Michael Goodridge, Bramley and Wannish.
Councillor Burke Lomax, Hazelmere East.
John Ward, Rowledge.
Peter Nicholson, Hazelmere East.
Jane Holroyd, Elsted Parish Council.
Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Councillor Joanne Shaw. I'm the chair of Guildford Standards Committee. Could I ask my committee, starting with Councillor Hughes?
Bob Hughes, Councillor for Tillingbourne.
Good afternoon, James Brooker, Councillor for Send and Lovelace.
Good afternoon, Councillor Yves de Contard for Merrow.
Sorry, hello, Amanda Crease, Councillor for Belfield and Slyfield.
Fiona White, Councillor for Ashworth.
Thank you. We will now deal with the preliminary items in our respective agendas. These are namely the apologies for absence and notification of substitutes, declarations of interest, minutes, and questions from the public and from councillors. Item 1, apologies for absence and notification of substitute members.
Chair, we have one apology from Joan Hegan.
Thank you.
And again, apologies for absence. John, have you had any notification?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies this evening from our two co-optees, Mary Litback and Julia Osborne. Thank you.
Item 2, disclosure of interest. Can I ask members of Waverley Standards Committee whether they have any declaration of interest in relation to any items included on the agenda of this meeting in accordance with Waverley's Code of Conduct and for councillors? None. Thank you.
And again, can I ask members of Guildford Standards Committee whether they have any declarations of interest in relation to any items included on the agenda for this meeting in accordance with Guildford's Code of Conduct for councillors? Thank you.
Item 3, minutes. Can I ask members of the Waverley Standards Committee to agree the minutes of the meetings held on Wednesday, 2nd April and the simultaneous meeting held on Wednesday, 30th April 2025. Are they agreed? Thank you.
Can I ask members of Guildford Standards Committee to agree the minutes of the simultaneous meeting held on Wednesday, the 30th of April 2025?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Item 4, questions from the members of the public. I'm advised that no questions have been received from the public.
No questions are being received from the public for Guildford.
Item 5, question from members of the council. Again, I'm advised that no questions have been received from members of Waverley Borough Council.
And again, no questions have been received from members of Guildford Borough Council. Item 6, the annual report of the Monitoring Officer 2024-25. This is the first substantive item of business on our agendas. May I ask Deborah Upton, Joint Head of Governance, to introduce it to both committees?
Thank you, Chair. So both committees will have in front of them an annual report from the Monitoring Officer, setting out the complaints that we've received in the year, which are anonymised and dealt with, also setting out member training and talking about cases of complaints where there have been maladministration. This is a rather fuller report than members would have had in previous years, and this is the standard of reporting that we'll be bringing in the future. But clearly, if there are other things that members would like to see in the annual report, then we'd be pleased to hear from members if you'd like it in at all a different format. So do forgive me because the page numbering for each council in the agenda packs is slightly different, but I'm going to start with the Waverley report. And things that I'd like to pick up for Waverley is there were a higher number of complaints at Waverley this in the past year than in previous years, but that is because a number of those complaints were duplicated. How we track the complaints is each particular complaint gets tracked as an individual complaint, even if it looks exactly the same. And the reason for that is when you interview someone, you might find there's a slightly different set of circumstances. So that's the way that we track complaints through. You'll also see that we've had more complaints about social media, and we will be bringing forward a social media policy to members. And again, when you have that policy and when you want to agree it, you might consider that that's an area where members might benefit from some training. And additionally, I would just like to inform members that we did run a training event on the Code of Conduct recently, but out of the 98 members, because it was a joint training event, unfortunately only 8 members attended. So we will be looking to provide more training for members in the autumn. And the training that we did provide is of course available online. I would actually mention that it was only Guildford members that attended the training. And I believe there may have been a conflict with Godalming Town Council on that day. So some Godalming members weren't able to attend. So if I turn to the Guildford Monitoring Officer report, you'll see that it's pretty much in the same format. Again, there was an increase in the number of complaints that were held. When we get to do next year's annual monitoring report, we will be able to report to you on the new timescales that you brought in your standards arrangements, because complaints are now dealt with by the governance team, and we monitor whether we're hitting the deadlines that we set out to you in your approved standards arrangements. For the year that this report covers, we didn't have those standards arrangements in place. So I'm going to stop talking at that, Chair, and take any questions from members.
Thank you. I'm happy to propose that Waverley Standard Committee approves the recommendation in respect of the matter which is set out on page 16 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second the motion? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rubini.
I'm also happy to propose that Guildford Standards Committee approves the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 10 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second the motion?
Seconded.
Yeah, Councillor White put her hand up first. Thank you.
May I now ask whether any non-member of the committee on the Waverley side wishes to comment or to ask a question in relation to this item? Where of any? Doesn't occur that as if that is happening. So let's move on.
May I also ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Guildford side wishes to comment or ask a question in relation to this item?
Thank you. Councillor Shaw and I have agreed that for this and the other substantive items on the agenda, we will invite members of both committees to comment or ask questions and debate the items together, rather than the one committee having the debate, followed by the other committee having theirs. We will take a note of who wishes to comment and alternate between members of each committee until no one else wishes to comment or to ask questions. And then both committees will take a separate vote on their respective motions. So I'll now ask members of the Waverley Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in relation to this item. Thank you. So we have two members who wish to comment. Okay. Then.
I'll now ask members of the Guildford Standards Committee to also indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in respect of this item. Thank you.
So we'll start with Councillor Zoe Parker-Lomax if she wishes to make a point or ask a question.
Thank you, Councillor. In light of the increase in the number of complaints, and it is significant, notwithstanding that 7 related to the same incident, even if we take those out, it's still a 300% increase in complaints. I wanted to suggest that we recommend to the executive that training isn't just offered, but it's mandated, because there's clearly a shift in trends of behaviour. That's one point. The second point is, are you in a position to quantify the increase in the number of complaints relating to social media?
Respond, please, Deborah.
I think in respect to social media, I think the answer is the year before we didn't have complaints in respect to social media. And obviously members are using social media more, and I think the public are becoming more aware of things that are on social media as well, and looking more, and I think that's what's driving an increase in complaints. And it is not just our councils that are noticing an increase in complaints around social media as well. One point I would like to make is that whilst there's been an increase in complaints, your numbers of complaints, I would say, are still pretty low, particularly considering that you've got parish councils as well. So there's not an indication that you are that either council is a council where there's a huge number of complaints that may be causing a concern. With regard to the training for all members of the council, it is part of the code of conduct itself that members will have training on the code of conduct. So I'm sure the monitoring officer would be pleased to recommend to both leaders that they encourage as much as possible their members to attend training.
Do come back. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Was there a quantification of the increase in social media?
Well, the increase in social media for both councils is there were none the year before. And so if you look at the table for both councils, and you forgive me because I'm swapping between both packs, but you can see that there are social media complaints this time. I see we don't set out which ones were relating to social media. So the social media ones tend to be about failure to treat people with respect, or bringing your council into disrepute are the two often used ones that people complain of with social media. I can tell you that for Waverley, there were 2 complaints that related to social media.
Okay. Thank you.
And also we get informal complaints as well about things on social media from councillors and members of the public as well.
Okay. Do you have any? Okay. So now move to Councillor Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dealing with the schedule of complaints, I see, in fact, there was only one parish councillor involved in our list. But on the second page, it just says breach of general principles. Any more detail of that? Because on the first page, it says breach of general principles, such as failure to treat officers with respect or that sort of thing. But there's no detail at all in the second column. So I wanted to know what they generally were. And the other thing about training, I was disappointed to see that due to staff shortages, there's a gap in detailed records of what training individual councillors have had, which is pretty critical if you're on a licensing committee or a planning committee to know whether you've actually complied with our constitution in actually being a member of those committees and taking part in the debate. And I just find that very strange that hasn't happened, and I hope that when you say we are working to create a members training tracker, when is that likely to be?
So I can't answer the specifics about the member training tracker, but perhaps one of the Democratic Services officers could do that for me. So in governance, we track any training that relates to the code of conduct. But one of the things that we agreed to do last year, I think, was to look at doing training jointly with Guildford, where that was applicable. And also there is a small group of members at Guildford that consider member training as well. And we agreed that member training would come to this committee. But if it's appropriate, if I could hand over to perhaps Mr. Harrod could help with the
Absolutely.
member training tracker.
Apologies, members. It's not something that I've been involved with directly, so I'd probably have to seek the answer and feed that back, if that's okay with members here.
And I believe Councillor Goodrich also asked me about the complaints that are pretty much the same on page 2 of the Waverley schedule, and those were complaints relating to compromising the impartiality of an officer, bringing an office or the council into disrepute, attempting to improperly use your position, and breach of the Nolan principles. Nolan.
Are you happy, Michael? Do you want to say any more?
Complaints are against lots of people or largely against 1 or 2 people, and whether at least those people have been offered extra training.
We do set out in the report that 7 complaints related to one particular issue.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Paul, you want to say something?
Thank you for recognising me, Mr. Chairman. I would also just add, it might also be wise for members to have training on what qualifies as a vexatious complaint as well, asking members to read between the lines somewhat there.
Board.
If I may, just having listened to the debates, whilst we are not necessarily going to name members, it might be helpful if we knew whether there was one member who was the result of all these complaints, or whether it was a whole number of members. So maybe we could go member A, B, C, D or something, because at the moment it's a little difficult to find out whether we have one vagabond or 3 normal people that made a slight error.
I think that's a helpful comment, actually. I think we should do that. Yes. We'll add that to our recommendations, Councillor Ward. The Standards Committee will now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendations in respect of this matter, which are set out on page 16 of our agenda as follows. That the Standards Committee resolves to review the contents of the annual report of the Monitoring Officer for 2024-25 to satisfy itself that the governance arrangements within the remit of the committee are operating effectively. 2, note the decisions taken in relation to allegations of misconduct against borough, town and parish councillors under the arrangements for dealing with allegations of misconduct as set out in Appendix 1. Note the details of the joint members' development training undertaken during 2024-25 as set out in Appendix 2. Item 4 is to make any recommendations for improvements. I think we've actually had a very specific recommendation from Councillor Ward, which I think we should minute and take on board, that we don't identify the names of individuals, but we actually say how many are due to Councillor A, Councillor B, etc.
Could we make that effectively retrospective and be told what's happened this year as well, rather than wait until we're in our dotage next year?
I think that's a good idea. Would you be happy with that, Deb?
We can recirculate the list with Councillor A, B and C.
Does that cover recommendations for all our recommendations? Was there anything arising from what Councillor Goodrich said that you seemed a bit unhappy about what we referred to the democratic services? I think you were saying that the training didn't seem to be good enough.
Well, I do think that we should have a fairly strict timetable to get training records up to date and get on with training.
Yeah, I think
clearly some members of the council more than others may need it pretty urgently.
I think that should go in as a recommendation as well.
Yes, I mean, if I could help and come back on that. Certainly since Democratic Services has been staffed this year, I know that they are keeping proper training records. There was a period of time where it doesn't mean the records weren't there, but where we have been unable to find records of training. And I think Councillor Goodridge, you'll recall, we were unable to find records of, as an example, petitions that had come in. So I think it's just been a hiatus where we had a lack of staff within Democratic Services, but we're now confident that we're keeping training records going forwards.
The leader would now like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just say I have also confirmed that the training records do exist for those members. I've also seen a few instances where members have alleged that they have undertaken training and the borough has no record of it. That is not the same as the borough not keeping the records. That merely says that the borough's record keeping does not agree with the member's memory, which is not the same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've sat on the risk committee as well. It seems to me if people aren't doing training on time, in particular with regards to certain committees like licensing and planning, then, and if that doesn't happen for a set period of time, that should be highlighted to the risk committee, I would suggest, and that should be part of our procedures.
I'm going to have recommendations.
Yes.
Thank you. Before I ask for this to be agreed, I noticed when I looked on Guildford's website under my training record, it doesn't list much of the training that I've done. Is that because that's not up to date and it's going to be up to date, or sorry?
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. If you let me know what you think you've attended, and we can make sure they're up to date. But yeah, I think we've had similar.
It's not my memory.
Yeah, we've had similar issues at Guildford as Waverley have had in terms of staffing within democratic services. So bear with us. And
so thank you. Before we go forward, does anybody have any, on the Guildford side, have any comments on the recommendations that have been made for Waverley?
So just say, Chairman, that presumably we're incorporating the recommendation from Councillor Ward in ours as well.
Yeah, but does anybody have any comments on that? Thank you. So Guildford Standards Committee will now also move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendations in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 10 of our agenda. The Standards Committee is asked to review the contents of the annual report of the Monitoring Officer for 2024 to satisfy itself that the governance arrangements within the remit of the committee are operating effectively. The committee is also asked to note the decisions taken in relation to allegations of misconduct against borough and parish councillors under the arrangements for dealing with allegations of misconduct as set out in Appendix 1. Note the details of the joint member development training undertaking during 2024 to 25 as set out in Appendix 2, and make any recommendations for improvement. Is this agreed?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 7, proposed changes to the terms of reference for the Joint Constitutions Review Group. May I ask Deborah to introduce this item to both committees?
Thank you, Chair. So the rationale behind the new proposed terms of reference for the JCRG is to make it easier for members of the JCRG and the Standards Committee to only draw membership from the Standards Committee. Previously at Guildford, membership was drawn from across the council, and the difficulty with that is that when things came to standards, standards members, every member of standards at Guildford's wanted to understand how the decisions had been reached rather than some members already having taken part. So members of the JCRG recommended that the membership of the JCRG be drawn from the Standards Committee of both councils, and the terms of reference were also slightly amended to say that there would be a quorum of 4, subject to each council having at least 2 members, and that 1 member of the executive from each council may also attend, but shall not be counted as part of the quorum and shall not have any vote. Now, obviously these are recommendations from the JCRG, but it's for members of the Standards Committee themselves to decide whether that actually works for you, recognising that you might find it difficult to come up with a quorum. I think it's very rare that we've had a case where there hasn't been a quorum at the JCRG, and of course it's not decision making in any event, but it is a really helpful group that provides feedback for us as officers. It's invaluable, and the work that it does for the Standards Committee saves this committee doing an awful lot of work itself. So I'll stop at that. And as I say, it's obviously for members themselves to decide whether this set of terms of reference works for them.
Thank you. I'm happy to propose that Waverley Standards Committee approves the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out in page 36 of our agenda. We also need to agree the membership of the JCRG for 2025-26, and we would therefore like to propose an additional recommendation as follows: that Councillors MacLeod and Long be appointed as members of the JCRG for 25-26. May I ask another member of the committee to second that motion? Thank you. Can I just say at this point, and if I may say, Deborah, what about the other members who were on the committee before? Maybe that comes later, but we had Councillor Goodrich was on the JCRG, unless he's not proposing to stand again.
Hadn't appreciated I was being axed from it, I must admit.
I hadn't either, actually.
4 members. So each group is to have 4 members.
Yeah.
So you've proposed 2. So I'd suggest you need to ask.
Right.
Whether members would be willing to.
Okay, well, let's do that. If Councillor Goodrich is willing to stand again, I'm sure are all the other members happy with that? Good. So we have Councillor Goodrich. Our previous 4th member was the leader, Councillor Follows, and I think that probably can't be allowed to happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your rules, I believe, are quite clear that it's a standards committee member. My recollection of our constitution is that I am disbarred from being a member of the standards committee as leader of the council. So Gemma Long will continue to serve as the Waverley Executive's representative on the standards committee. I assume that therefore she would be a member of the Joint Constitutions Review Group, but therefore without a vote or without contribution to the numbers for being quorate. But that would be my expectation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're still short of 1 member at the moment, aren't we? Yes, sorry, Jimmy. Yeah.
So actually, I think that needs clarification, because at the moment, if a member of the executive cannot vote on that, then I can't count towards the quorum or the. So I wasn't clear whether being on the executive disbars a member from sitting on the JCRG, or whether it's acceptable for 1 member who is on the standards committee and the executive, and that this rule was that the new wording is that in addition, a member of the executive.
I think the way the draft terms of reference are written, you wouldn't actually be counted as a member from being part of the quorum, and you wouldn't be able to vote. As it happens, I don't actually agree with that. I've thought more about it, actually. And I don't think we should be doing that. I actually think it would be totally appropriate for you to be able to vote and to be able to be counted towards the quorum. At the moment, we've only got 3 members anyway. We've got myself, Councillor Goodrich, and yourself, Gemma. And we haven't yet managed to establish a 4th member yet. So I just don't agree with it. I can't totally remember the discussion of why it went that way. But we also had a very valuable member of the Guildford committee, Catherine Houston, who actually was, I believe, a member of your executive, but she's no longer in your standards committee. So in that sense, she wouldn't be allowed to stand, actually. But she was a very valuable member of the JCRG. So I would suggest that we don't go with what the recommendation is, and that we allow 1 member of the executive from either council to be on the JCRG, to be part of the quorum and to have voting rights. Councillor Ward.
I'm not standing for this committee, by the way, in case you're getting excited. But can I suggest we look at where it says quorum 4 and put something like 1 member of the executive who is not a member of the standards committee may attend. And that would clarify things for Councillor Long and the rest of the world.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry,
if I understood how you interpreted that, the original version of it said that if you were a member of the executive, you had to be a member of the Standards Committee, but members of the executive had no vote and did not contribute to the quorum. The way you've just proposed it, I think says any executive member could be on the JCRG. My assumption was that the purpose of the discussion that we had at the last JCRG was to ensure that the executive member present was a member of the Standards Committee, so that you didn't have to repeat certain debates more than once.
Yeah.
And so from the Waverley side, however you were to articulate that, Councillor Long would be the appointee, so that there was some continuity and that they didn't have to repeat discussions. That was, in fact, the primary driver for that particular clause, was to prevent repeat content to both committees, which I know frustrated a number of us in this room on a number of occasions, if you recall.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So are we all agreed to that then, that Gemma or members of the executive can be on the JCRG, will have voting rights and they count towards the quorum? Councillor Goodrich.
Yeah, we got to, rather than personalise it, we ought to be doing the thing correctly. And it seems to me that what we're saying in the first part is the composition of the JCRG shall be members of each council's standards committee. And therefore, if we are personalising it, Gemma is a member of that committee, so that's fine. So she can be a member of the JCRG. Then we come to the quorum, saying that one member of the executive from each council may also attend. And therefore, and I think the words Councillor Ward suggested of saying who may not be on the Standards Committee, it hasn't got to be not, but it could be may not be a member of the Standards Committee, is an extra few words which would clarify it. So that, for example, we could have a situation where we've had in the past where the leader of Waverley attends but has no vote and so on. But Councillor Long is on the Standards Committee, so has every right to be on it. And I think that solves the problem, as long as we just get the clarification. We're not changing it, we're just getting a bit of clarification under quorum.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I agree with that. So all we need to do is find another member of the Standards Committee who would like to stand for the JCRG. Is there anyone who wishes to do that? No immediate volunteers. Councillor Rubini.
Nobody else wants to do it, then I will take it on.
Oh, thank you. So that gives us our numbers now. And it also means the way that Councillor Goodrich has explained things, it means the leader can attend the meeting if he wishes to, and he'd be very welcome to do so. And that would, I would presume, would probably apply on the Guildford side as well. So I think I ought to hand it back now to Joanne.
Thank you. As I understand it, anybody can attend any meeting, any councillor can attend any meeting as a non-member. So I don't think it's necessary to include, you know, another member of the executive can attend, because they can attend anyway. So what's being proposed, and we did discuss it earlier, that because of the limited number of people on the Standards Committee, it would be the right thing to do, I believe, for any executive member on the Standards Committee, if they wanted to stand for the JCRG, they should be able to and would count towards the quorum and have voting rights. And that's what I propose changing in here. And this is the same as Waverley do. So on that condition, I'm happy to propose that Guildford Standards Committee approves the recommendation with respect to this matter, which is set out on page 28 of our agenda, but to include what we've agreed now, We also need to agree the membership of the JCRG for 25-26, and I would therefore like to propose an additional recommendation as follows. Councillor Shaw and Councillor Hughes be appointed as members of the JCRG for 25-26. And can I ask if any other members of the committee want to stand on the JCRG? Councillor White, thank you. Councillor de Contard, thank you very much. So could I ask another member of the committee to second the motion? Thank you.
Okay. Well, the next bits of the agenda really all to do with the discussion. And I think we've actually done that rather than formally. So I don't think we need to go through a procedure of asking everybody if they want to comment. Other than I will ask anyone if they wish to comment further on anything that we've already discussed. Or are we all happy with the outcome of our discussion? We are happy, are we? So can I leave it to you, Deborah, to redo the draft terms of reference broadly along the lines that the way that Councillor Goodrich read it out?
Yes, yes, Chair, and I think that was the intention of the JCRG.
Good. Well, it somehow got misunderstood in some way, yeah. Okay, so I think we've really dealt with that. Oh, sorry, I need to hand back to you. See if there's anything else you want
So
to...
can I ask if there's anybody on the Guildford side? Sorry, may I ask if anybody on the Guildford side would like to comment or raise a question? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a good outcome that we have a full committee appointed if this is approved, and a member of the executive who's also a member of the committee from each council. And obviously the leaders can attend or send another member of the executive if they wish.
Right.
Oh, sorry. John, is there anybody in the meeting chat?
Yeah, I think that's my colleagues here. It's on Zoom.
No. Okay. And Deborah, would you like to add anything? No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. I think we now move on. I'll go back to the script back. We moved on to item 8, part 2, articles of the Constitution. May I ask Deborah to introduce this item to both committees?
Did you take a vote on that? Did you ask everyone
we need a formal vote.
Yeah.
Sorry, we finally didn't take a formal vote. So can I vote on the recommendation from the Waverley side first of all? Are we all agreed? Thank you.
And on the Guildford side, are we
Agreed.
all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. So moving on to item 8, would you please introduce this item to both committees? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This item is really about tidying up the articles of the Constitution to make both of them align. So as members are aware, we do want both constitutions to align unless there is a particular reason why one council's constitution should be different. And there are some cases where that is the case. In this particular case as well, when we look at making changes, we also look at what's best practice and how can we make improvements. You can see under paragraph 6.3, we set up what the changes are that we've made to the articles. They're not big changes. They are primarily putting introductions into each article to make it clearer, ensuring that titles are added and changed where they need updating, and just making sure that we align throughout the Constitution with this. And I'm looking at Guildford's agenda pack, and there is a set of tracked changes at Appendix 1 so that members can see, which start on page 48, members can see what those changes are as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to propose that Waverley Standards Committee approves the recommendation to the meeting of the Council on 15th July 2025 in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 44 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Rubini.
I just want to clarify before I go on, I did raise it with John, but on page 47 of the agenda, section 2.1, section B refers to only Waverley voters.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, that particular section should actually read only registered voters of the borough area or those living or working in the borough, so that the constitution is the same for both. We'll just use the word borough.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Thank you. So I'm also happy to propose that Guildford Standards Committee approves the recommendation to the meeting of the council on the 29th of July 2025 in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 36 of our agenda. I am in the right place, aren't I? Yeah. Sorry. May I ask another member of the committee to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
May I now ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Waverley side wishes to comment or ask a question in relation to this item? No? So move on.
May I also ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Guildford side wishes to comment or ask a question? No.
May I now ask members of the Waverley Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in relation to this item? Councillor Ward, I'll take a note. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Ward.
Thank you. May I also ask members of the Guildford Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in respect of this item? No.
No. So, Councillor Ward, if you please ask your question or comment.
Well, my first comment is I'm slightly confused. This appears to be happening quite a lot lately. Track changes, we're told, are in Appendix 1. We've got 14 articles changed, and the only track change I can find is on page 76 of our papers under 13.4. Does that mean that others haven't changed, or does that mean that the changes aren't tracked here, or am I missing something?
I just need to look one moment, Chair, because I was looking at the Guildford agenda pack at that point. Right. So apologies, the Guildford pack has the tracked changes, but the tracked changes are not in the Waverley pack.
I think I asked a similar question at the pre-meeting. Deborah, and I think you said something about we could refer to the table. There's a table.
Indeed, there is a table setting out what the changes are, but I do recognise that's nowhere near as clear for members to see. That you have to work a bit on your own judgment rather than the Guildford pack, where there's a set of track changes that makes it easier to see.
Are members of the committee happy with that, or do we want to actually see a pack with an updated version with track changes before we approve it? Or are we happy to approve it on the basis of the table? Councillor Goodrich.
I'm happy for today, but might I suggest when it goes to full council that the councillors have it so they can see it.
Okay.
Yes, and apologies that the tracked set weren't put into your pack.
Okay. Where am I on the script? I've got lost. Okay. And we now have to read out the recommendation or the resolution in this case. Where the standard will now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendation, which is set out on page 44 of our agenda as follows. That the Standards Committee resolves to 1. Support the suggested amendments to the Articles of Constitution as set out in Appendix 1 to this report. Note and agree the proposed steps and timetable for implementation of the necessary amendments as set out below. The committee also recommends that full council on 15th July 2025 resolves to 1. Approve the amendments to the Articles of the Constitution as set out in Appendix 1 to this report. 2. Authorise the monitoring officer to make the necessary changes to Part 2 of the Council's Constitution. Is that agreed? Good, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to be repetitive. So Guildford Standards Committee will also now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 36 of our agenda as follows. That the Standards Committee resolved to 1. Support the suggested amendments to the Articles of the Constitution as set out in Appendix 1 to this report. 2. Note and agree the proposed steps and timetable for implementation of the necessary amendments as set out below. The committee also recommends that full council on the 29th of July resolves to 1. Approve the amendments to the Articles of the Constitution as set out in Appendix 1 to this report, and 2. Authorise the monitoring officer to make necessary changes to Part 2 of the Council's Constitution. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 9, suggested revisions to Part 3 of the Constitution, responsibility for functions. May I ask Deborah to introduce this item to both committees?
Thank you, Chair. So in this case, Appendix 1 sets out the changes for both councils, and Appendix 2 is the clean copy with those changes included. So you can see as I go through the table, you can see that there's a column that says Guildford, and it shows where the corresponding part is in the new table at Appendix 2. And similarly, there's a column called Waverley that sets out where the corresponding part is. The changes that I've made are set out in the notes. And so you can see that the first change, as an example, is paragraph 5, where the words are new for Guildford. So as I've gone through, I've shown where they're new for Guildford in yellow, and I've also shown where they are new for Waverley in green. So for both councils, you should be able to see where we've added words and where we've done some tidying up. So as an example, where we currently have a function for outsourcing non-executive functions that relates to the council, we've added the words and insourcing. So some of these are just things that we've put in for clarity. And hopefully, Chair, they are clear to members, certainly clearer than the last report, but I'm happy to take any questions on them.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also happy to propose that Guildford Standards Committee approves the recommendation to the meeting of the Council on the 29th of July 2025 in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 108 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second that motion? Councillor Brooker, thank you.
May I now ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Waverley side wishes to comment or ask a question in relation to this item? No comment, thank you.
May I also ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Guildford side wishes to comment? Thank you.
May I now ask members of Waverley Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in relation to this item? None received.
Thank you. May I also ask members of Guildford Standards Committee if they wish to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in respect to this item? Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a comment, really. It actually makes a great deal of sense to make these changes to the constitutions of both councils so that they align with one another. And I think it will make life a lot easier for officers as well, just to have one constitution to refer to rather than having to flip backwards and forwards and see where they align and where they don't. So I think the whole exercise makes a great deal of sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your positive comment.
Thank you. The Waverley Standards Committee will now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 112 of our agenda as follows: that the committee recommends to full council on 15th July 2025, one, that the amendments to Part 3 of the Constitution, responsibility for functions, as set out in Appendix 2 to this report, be approved. 2, that the monitoring author be authorised to make the necessary changes to the Council's Constitution, Part 3, responsibility for functions, together with any consequential amendments. Is that agreed? Thank you.
The Guildford Standards Committee would also now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 108 of our agenda as follows: that the committee recommends to full council on the 29th of July 2025, 1, that amendments to Part 3 of the Constitution, responsibility for functions, as set out in Appendix 2 to the report, be approved. 2, that the monitoring officer be authorised to make the necessary changes to the council's constitution, Part 3, responsibility for functions, together with any consequential amendments. Is that agreed?
Thank you, John. We'll now move to our final item, item 10, review of access to information procedure rules. May I ask Deborah to introduce this item to both committees?
Thank you, Chair. So both councils at the moment have a set of access to information procedure rules that are pretty much the same, and they're pretty much the same across most councils, but we have made some slight changes. So we are proposing additional content around the public's ability to record, photograph, film and report on meetings. We've added in a section on the need to know, which is the member's right to be able to access information. And we've added an inclusion to the officer decision-making protocol that we've recently agreed. And the current rules are set out as an appendix, and there are tracked changes at appendix. So appendix 3 is the new set of rules, and text which has been added to the existing rules is set out in the appendix. It says in red, but it's in a different colour on my system.
Thank you. I'm happy to propose that Waverley Standards Committee approves the recommendation to the meeting of the Council on 15th July 2025 in respect of this matter, which is set out in page 130 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second the motion? Councillor Albini, thank you.
Thank you. I'm also happy to propose that Guildford Standards Committee approves the recommendation to the meeting of the Council on the 29th of July 2025 in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 126 of our agenda. May I ask another member of the committee to second that motion? Councillor de Contard.
May I now ask whether any non-member of the Standards Committee on the Waverley side wishes to comment or to ask a question? No?
Would anybody on the Guildford side, non-members, like to speak? No.
May I now ask the members of the Waverley Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in relation to this item? Councillor Ward? Anyone else? Councillor Long? Councillor Lonat? So we've got three people. So back to you.
Yeah. May I also ask members of Guildford Standards Committee to indicate if they wish to comment or ask a question in respect of this item? Councillor Hughes.
So we start with Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry to be a little repetitive, but I'm really getting a bit confused and actually quite upset. Let's go to page 131 of our agenda. Next to last sentence, the text that has been added to the existing rules is shown as track changes in red text. From there forward, there is not a single thing in red other than my frustrated comments in the margin. What is going wrong with track changes? Why can they not be done? And please, can we improve this, because this is not an acceptable standard to bring to committee?
I'm very sorry, and I absolutely agree with you. I think I've worked out what's happened, and we've been very diligent with our officers and said, you will not send reports to members that have got track changes or comments left in them by other officers when the reports have been cleared. And I think we've probably been so zealous that someone at the last stage has actually taken out the track changes, not realising that they were meant to be contained in the report. And we've given instructions to Dem Services that they're to make sure no one sends forward reports with track changes or their comments left in. It's very sloppy, and I think we've just been so over enthusiastic. So I'm absolutely apologise about that, and we will make sure that for this committee, where you do need to see track changes, that they are actually left in.
Thanks, Deborah. If you can liaise with Democratic Services to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a comment on paragraph 10.2, which is on page 129, where it talks about the risk that if interpreted incorrectly, members of the public might think it's limiting their ability to make points and present their views, and that councillors may also not be clear on their rights to access council information. Now, I raise it because I had the benefit of being at the run through and was able to raise it then. And I'm certainly convinced that it does no such thing, and that the councillors' rights to see and have any documents in the council are still there. I think it's worth, when this is presented at the two council meetings, that point is made clear, that this is a key risk, but actually it's not a risk because of the way it's worded.
If I could just add, we hope that our changed wording actually helps councillors to understand better their rights on the need to know, and we make it clearer for the public.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but on first reading, it might not seem like it. Yeah.
Right. I think it's over now to Councillor Long or Councillor Barker. I think it's Councillor Long that's next.
So yeah, all I was going to add to the track changes is, I mean, for those of us who've already seen it once, it's probably okay for today. But yeah, if they can be there for full council so that they can see clearly. Thank you.
Yeah. And now Councillor
Thank you very much. So I think these are pretty important as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure I would want to vote on any changes without actually seeing the track changes. Not to be pedantic, but I do think access to information is vital. And in particular, I'd like to know about any changes to the need to know basis. That I'm particularly interested in any limitations there on members' need to know.
If I can assist, we certainly haven't limited members' need to know rights because they're enshrined in common law, and we couldn't limit them even if we had wanted to. What we've done, we think, is clarify for members what their need to know rights are. So we've set out clearly what your need to know rights are so that both members and the public can see better how they can access that information, and that the public can see how members can access information on a need to know basis as well.
Thank you. Right. The Waverley Standards Committee will now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendations in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 130 of our agenda as follows. That the committee resolves to agree the suggested additions and amendments to the Council's access to information procedure rules as set out in Appendix 3 to the report. That the committee recommends to full Council on 15 July the adoption of the revised access to information procedure rules and authorises the monitoring officer to make the necessary changes to Part 4 of the Council's constitution. Is that agreed? Agreed. Abstain. Oh, sorry, because you didn't see the facts. So can we note that Councillor Bartolome has abstained? Yes. Are you abstaining as well? So Councillor Ward abstaining as well. Okay.
Thank you. So the Guildford Standards Committee will now move to vote on the motion to approve the recommendation in respect of this matter, which is set out on page 130 of our agenda as follows. That the committee resolves to agree the suggested additions and amendments to the Council's access to information procedure rules as set out at Appendix 3 to the report. That the committee recommends to full Council on the 29th of July 2025 the adoption of the revised access to information procedure rules and authorises the monitoring officer to make the necessary changes to Part 4 of the Council's constitution. Is that agreed? Thank you. As there are no other items of business on the agenda of the Guildford Standards Committee, I am now closing the meeting, but I'd like to thank Deborah for her contribution.
We have also concluded the business of the Waverley Standards Committee and that I therefore declare our meeting closed. Thank you again, Deborah.